This is Laricy Live, and I'm your host, Matt Laricy. We're giving you unfiltered access to the world of real estate, where we can cover the market trends, news, and honest answers to keep you ahead of the real estate game. Laricy Live is brought to you by Lincoln Title. Lincoln Title is the best and most efficient title company in Chicago and is the best place to close your property. Laricy Live is brought to you by Guaranteed Rate and Ben Cohen. Ben Cohen is the #1 lender in Illinois and can close your loan in as fast as 8 days. So today, we are bringing back the NAR lawsuit as a topic. It's been a few weeks, maybe a month. I don't know. It's been a little bit. And there's a lot of stuff that has happened. And it's still been a big topic that a lot of my sellers and buyers are asking me about. And we previously did a NAR settlement podcast a couple weeks back where it was kind of a little bit more of a reaction and talking about more or less like why we feel like, the thing's kind of ridiculous and also the, why people need buyer's agents. But today, what I want to really focus on is kind of like what's been the fallout since this has happened. Now, it's been a few weeks. People have gotten their bearings a little bit. We kind of have an understanding, a full understanding of what's happened. And for a recap, for people that don't know, is that the NAR settled this lawsuit, and essentially the MLS cannot have brokers' commissions on there. Sellers are not required to pay buyers' brokers. It's optional. Doesn't mean they can't. It just means it's optional. And realtors need to get a buyer's agreement signed if they're going to be working with a buyer disclosing what they're making. Now, the problem that we're doing another podcast on is there's been a lot of misinformation out there, and what we want to try to talk about is what we're seeing and hearing. And I think the biggest problem and misconception is, as now that we've had a few weeks to digest this, is that the NAR, when they settled this, they were just unprepared, which I think is crazy, because the person that they have running the NAR, supposedly their background's in crisis management and PR. And I think it's pretty comical that you have somebody that's in charge of the organization that's in crisis management and PR, and they settled this lawsuit on a Friday, told no one, and then just let the media kind of run wild on this so that we can have a lot of fake news go out there of not accurate information of what this really means. The smarter move by the NAR would have been to settle this, and when they settled it, is to tell all the companies what the settlement was going to be, so they could be prepared to have some, counter points to the media, so we could get accurate information out there. And for anybody that's out there, probably is aware that realtors know a lot of people, and their PR, playbooks are pretty deep. So to kind of let the media run wild on this probably hasn't been great. And that's why we're kind of doing this. I want to talk a little bit through kind of like what we've been hearing and kind of like, what do you do in this? Now, if you're a buyer and seller come July, like, what are we going to be doing, right? So let's kind of dig into this. Why now that things have settled down, why did NAR do this? I mean, honestly, there was copycat lawsuit after copycat lawsuit. They were nonstop coming in. I think at the end of the day, something had to be settled, because I think we would just been getting sued for the rest of our lives. I also think NAR probably went bankrupt. And I think, we had I think they had to give something. And although I don't agree with this whole settlement, I can see why it's happened now that things have kind of shaken out a little bit. And a lot of people are wondering, are things going to be different in different states? Well, like, does this settlement affect Illinois different than Missouri compared to New York? No. I mean, this is the National Association of Realtors, which is nationwide. So this affects the same in real estate across all states. That's been a big one of a question that we've been fielding. Come July, does the world end? No, it doesn't end. It just changes. And there's an old saying, guys, you either adapt or you die. And we're going to be seeing some differences in the industry. And at the end of the day, I don't think it's, now that I've actually like kind of read through the points of this, like, I don't know. I know a lot of people were freaking out, and then I read this thing, like, what's the big deal? Like, I really don't. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people out there are like, you're an idiot. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of that one, right? But, the world really doesn't end. I mean, listen, if you hated realtors, and one thing I could tell from my TikTok and Instagram is that people hate realtors. But I can't tell you that, you didn't ever there was never like a gun to your head that you had to use a real estate agent. There was never that. Like, you could always do it on your own. And once July comes, it's just stating that, like, hey, like the rules have changed, and, people who kind of figure this out are going to be fine, and the people who aren't good at their jobs are going to lose, and that's going to be really it. So sellers, come July, they don't have to pay buyer's brokers. That's not true. Sellers can still pay buyer's brokers. Okay, it just can't be advertised on the MLS. Now, here's the thing, guys. There's a lot of different websites that aren't the MLS. You got Zillow, you got Trulia, you got Realtor.com, you got Redfin, you got Zenlist, you got Top Agent Network, you got Homes.com. I mean, I could go on and on and on. The MLS can't have cooperating commission, okay? That's it. That doesn't mean a seller doesn't have to pay commission. And for the record out there, guys, you had to at least pay $1 previously, prior to this lawsuit. So the lowest commission that a seller could ever pay pre-lawsuit settlement was $1. Now you could pay $0. So listen, if a seller doesn't want to pay a buyer's broker, by all means, they can't. I have the most listings in the city of Chicago. That's just been the fact. And I've gone on at least minimum 30 listing appointments since this has all happened. And I've had a few people bring up, what does this settlement mean to them? Do they not pay people? And what I've said is that, like, hey, listen, I strongly encourage you to pay a buyer's broker. Do you have to? No. Since I've been in the business, since I've ever written up a real estate agreement on my listings, okay, I put, here's what I would pay if it's my full commission. Here's what I would pay if I'm dual agency, and here's what our commission is if there's no buyer's broker. I've had 3 tiers of commission since I've been doing this. It's been on every single listing appointment I have. I also have a cancel anytime policy for free. Okay, that's been on all my agreements since I've been in the business. So like I tell my sellers, it's like, hey, listen, if you don't want to pay a buyer's broker and they don't come, since I've been in the business, I've had that option. You don't have one? We don't pay it out. But if somebody brings us a great offer and they have a buyer's broker, I would strongly suggest paying them, because, it's not that easy to sell a property. And I'll tell you, I haven't had any people not want to pay a buyer's broker minus one person. The seller that doesn't want to pay a buyer's broker, we also didn't take the listing. And it's not just, that's not the only reason why we didn't take the listing, but we didn't take the listing because they wanted $575,000 for their place. And the highest best comp in the building was $490,000. There's currently 14 listings for sale in the building. They would be the highest. I have a listing on the market currently that's better than that listing, listed for almost $100,000 lower, and we haven't sold it. So, but that person doesn't want to pay a buyer's commission. So again, this is why I think, like, when people talk about, like, well, prices are really going to come down, usually, statistically speaking, people who sell by owner sell for less money. Sell for less money and take longer to sell, and they also they're just more difficult properties. And I think a lot of people who aren't going to be paying buyer's brokers are going to be properties that are overpriced and more difficult sales, and they'll end up not selling. And then somebody will end up taking that property over, and they're going to list it with an agent, and they'll pay a buyer's broker and it'll sell. And people are talking about, like, there's this real estate mafia. Guys, it's not a mafia. You could sell it on your own. Try it. Like, there's like 7 billion people in this world, or maybe there's 8 billion. I don't know how many there is. There's a lot of people out there. Do it on your own. Hate us, hate realtors, don't use us. There's no mafia. There's no mafia. Like if you got the internet, and this is the biggest point, is people could just go online and buy stuff. You got it. Just go on there. Use it. Do it yourself. But, for the people who want help and don't have the time and need some assistance, hire somebody, Zillow has an option that you could sell your place by owner. And there's a lot of realtors who make their living by just calling people that are by owner and trying to convert them to use an agent to then sell. Most people on Zillow don't sell when they list it by owner, and they end up hiring an agent, and then they end up selling. So I don't think there's a mafia in there, guys. I just think it's their expertise. Like, I could probably read a lot about how to do a surgery. I probably could. There's YouTube videos. I mean, I could probably do it, watch it. But if somebody's life's in their hands, and then I was like, well, I YouTubed it a bunch. I'm pretty sure you don't want me to be doing surgery on you. Same thing with law. I could read a bunch about law. I could memorize the law. I could go to court. But if now you're on trial for your life, you're probably not going to hire me. You're going to want to probably hire a professional. Now, I know these are two extremes examples, but sellers out there, if they don't want to pay a buyer's broker, and when we ask who's not going to be paying a buyer's broker, you don't have to. Don't do it and see what happens. You got to remember, and I talked about this a lot in my last podcast, is that back in the day, people didn't pay buyer's brokers. They just paid their main office, and then that office would get a finder's fee from the buyer if they wanted to be able to buy it. So, you don't have to do it. I think it's going to be extremely difficult not to do it, or a bad decision not to do it. It's hey, I got some properties that I've had on the market for a long time. There's 18.4 months of inventory in the luxury market, in the downtown market's above $1.5 million. If you want to offer zero, you can. But if you're competing against 18.4 months of inventory, and then you got people who are offering bonuses and they have buyer's brokers, the odds of somebody coming unrepresented to your property and buying it are going to be very low. And the odds of that person saying well, I'm going to pay for my buyer's agent when I could buy, 18.4 months of inventory from other stuff where I don't have to pay it are also going to be low. So you just have to factor that. What people forget to realize is that most of America is built on these stock homes. And there's 4 houses in a huge subdivision. There's 300 houses in these subdivisions. And statistically speaking, there's 20 of these houses on the market at a time, okay? Right now, I get it. There's no houses. And people are it's always so easy to sell a house. Well, when it's not, we'll see what happens. We'll see if you want to pay a buyer's broker. But when people ask me who's not paying buyer's brokers, people are going to be pioneers out there, and we're going to see how it goes. And I'm actually very happy that this is happening in July, because once July hits, the market shifts down. And July is always once the market starts to shift to a moderate market to more of a balanced. And then once we hit the fall, it becomes a buyer's market, and that happens every year. Except this year, we're going to have a little thing called the presidential election. It's going to be probably the bloodiest election we've seen in American history. And that's going to get people really scared, which is going to create uncertainty, and uncertainty is going to create less sales. But at that time, when things aren't moving as fast and then people decide not to offer a buyer's commission and properties sit longer, they may think themselves, well, hey, what are the reasons why I'm not selling? Well, maybe I'm not offering a buyer's commission. We'll see. Again, I'm not saying you have to do it. I'm not saying that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that if a seller doesn't want to offer it now, they don't have to. Do I think sellers will still pay? I do. And I do think that sellers are going to see the difference in people who offer commissions and who don't. And I think they're going to see people who sell faster than those that don't. It'll be the same way if sellers can sell by themselves without an agent, and they see that, when they do that, it takes longer and it's more difficult and ends up selling for less. And those who hire agents sell faster. So I think this is all going to correct itself. Again, I think in the long run, I think this will be a good thing, because I think it's going to change the business, which I think is solid, which I'm going to touch on. But I do think majority of sellers will still be paying commissions. And if I have a seller out there that's wondering whether they should or shouldn't, I cannot stress enough that I do think you need to be paying a buyer's agent. Well, where can they not put commissions? As of now, you just can't put it on the MLS. As of now. Now, could this change? Of course, this is an evolving thing. This is why we're doing a little bit of an update, because it comes up. But right now, the only difference is with this lawsuit is that you cannot display a commission on the MLS. You can still pay a buyer's broker. You just cannot display it on the MLS. Everywhere else, it can go. When a property closes, if you can't display commissions on the MLS, how will you know which ones were paid and which ones weren't? That, to me, is a great question. One of the big things that the media is pumping out is that property values can drop anywhere from, I've seen as low as 5% to as high as 30%. Well, if we don't know which properties are closing with commission and without commission, how do we really know, right? And will the MLS really even exist after all of this? We're going to touch on that in a minute. But the reality is that if we don't know which properties close with and without commission, how do we know what's going to happen with pricing? Now, the MLS hasn't announced that there's going to be a field, right? Because right now you can't display commissions on the MLS. So my hunch is if I can't display the commissions on the MLS, right? That's the rule. I can't display them. How am I going to be allowed to close a property saying that there was a commission? Because technically speaking, the MLS can't have anything to do with commissions anymore. So how's that going to work? And then how are we going to determine which properties have them and don't, and then determine the value differences, right? Because if somebody pays a buyer's broker and somebody doesn't, according to the media, that means that prices are going to drop. So now I don't have the answer to that, guys. That is still fresh. But I want to put that out there as a trend to watch, because that's going to be a big one, especially the fact that as of now, commissions cannot be on the MLS. So what do I tell a seller that doesn't want to pay a buyer's broker? I would tell them that I would continue to pay a buyer's broker, and that's what we're doing. Because I think the odds of a random buyer walking off the street unrepresented is going to be slim. And I think, finding a buyer that is going to be able to pay their buyer's broker, specifically in the under $750,000 price points, is going to be very rare. And I'd say I would continue to do it. And if you don't want to do it, then you don't. There's no gun to your head telling you that you have to do it. There's no mafia out there, okay? I know that I keep using this mafia term because, for some reason out there, the media keeps talking about this real estate mafia. As if, for the record out there, I think the average age of real estate agents is 56 years old, and it's not like the N.A.R. really has that much power over us. I don't think 98% of realtors can even name who the leader is of the N.A.R. So I don't know what this mafia is coming from, but there's no grip here. If you don't want to pay it, don't do it. And if you sit for a long time, you may learn your lesson on it. So, but at the end of the day, I'm telling my people that when I list a property, I think it's a good idea to continue to pay a buyer's broker. And so far, we have been going that route, and we've been selling for great prices, and things have been working out fantastic. And my sellers are extremely happy. What if the DOJ doesn't allow sellers to pay brokers? So this is something else we have to watch, because the DOJ could not sign off on this, okay? They could say that, we're not going to pay brokers. So what the DOJ wants to do is completely and utterly decouple commission. So they're saying that they could sign a bill stating a seller can never pay a buyer. Now, here's my problem with that, is that in this right now, this is still the United States of America. And as of today, it's still a free country. How can a DOJ tell you what you can do with your money? How is that legal? How can somebody tell me that I'm not allowed to give my money to somebody else? If that gets passed and they say that you can't do what you want to do with your own cash, personally, I think that's got to create anarchy. Because I don't, at that point, I don't know what this is doing. And I'm not trying to get too political about this type of stuff, but if you're telling me as an individual, I can't pay my money to somebody that I want to, if that's not communist and socialist, guys, I don't know what is. And if you support that, I feel bad for you. I really do. I feel bad if you think it's okay for the government to tell you how you could spend your money, because I don't know where that's going to end from there. And that to me doesn't sound like that's a good precedent for what's going to happen in the future. And again, I think if you think that's okay, you got to screw loose. And maybe it's because I've had families fighting wars, and I believe in the United States of America, and I love America, and I love everything about being a free person in the United States of America. And I still think that we are the greatest country in the world. But if we start limiting and dictating how we can and can't spend our own money, if you think that's okay, if you actually think that's okay, you're not American. You're just not. And anybody out there that thinks that is crazy. And the DOJ passes that, which they're trying to do, that's where I have a big problem. I have a big problem with the government telling me how I can spend my money. Will new construction change the way they pay brokers? This has been a new one too. In fact, I've seen a lot of new construction pay bonuses. So no. I don't think they're going to. I think new construction has always tried to sell it on their own. They've always had. That's why they hire their own. Most new construction has an in-house sales team, okay? And they encourage buyers not to have brokers. I got a friend. He'll never watch this, but I think it's funny. He went in on his own. Okay, and I don't sell in the area he bought, okay? But another guy on our team would have sold it to him. And he walked into a new construction property and bought it on his own. And he was bragging. He's like, well, I saved $10,000. And we're like, well, yeah, that's good for you, man. I said to him, great for you, man. And then he calls me up and he's like, hey, they didn't build a garage. I said, what do you mean they didn't build a garage? He's like, they didn't build a garage. I just thought they had a garage with these because I saw other ones. I was like, I don't know, was it in your contract? He's like, I saw the other houses had garages, so I just assumed I had one. I'm like, you just assumed it? He's like, well, the person that like represented me, or represented the developer was pretty nice, so I just assumed that I'd get a garage. I was like, well, you can't assume anything if you're buying a property. And it just blows my mind. It's like, here's a guy that I know decided to walk into a new construction buying his own. And again, it's not an area service, so I don't really care. I wouldn't, I would have referred it out. It doesn't matter to me, right? Saved $10,000, but guess what? He had to pay for a garage. Guess how much the garage was? $26,000. Did he win there? Now, last time, hold on, let me check. 26,000 minus 10,000, 16,000. That's $16,000 he lost. Now, if he had an agent on him, I'm sure they would have caught that. Said, hey, why is there no garage on this contract? It's pretty standard, right? Is it an upgrade? I'm sure they would have figured that out. Now, there's a lot of little other stuff that's come up since then that have questioned. Like I said, hey, I don't work for free. I'm not getting paid for this. I know that we're the only business in the world where we have to pay for our own health care, pay for our staff, pay for our cars, pay for insurance, pay for everything. And then also our advice and time is also free. But I will tell you, like, not my problem at the end of the day. So, like, people have to realize that, like, these things can be costly for you. And if you're buying new construction, especially with all the pitfalls that happen in new construction, I would strongly advise to get representation, but I do not think new construction is going to change the way of how they compensate brokers. Will brokers not put their properties on the MLS? I think this is a big one to watch, guys. Prior to the MLS becoming the MLS, what brokers would do is each broker would have their own MLS books, and you would go into an office and you would pay money to get a book, and then you'd be able to see like Remax's listings. You'd see Coldwell Banker's listings. You'd see Century 21 listings. Nowadays you got Compass and at properties and these things. So here's the one to watch, right? If I can't put the cooperating commission on the MLS, and now I don't know if the MLS is going to be accurate, because if I close a property out or don't close a property out, and there's an MLS fee, there's no commission, there is commission, and then like there's no really benefit for me to put it on there because it goes to all the feeder sites, and according to America, that every property is going to sell for the rest of the in one day on the market for the rest of the world, and every single TikToker and Instagrammer out there is going to tell me, well, I could just go on the internet to look for homes. Okay, but like, what if I don't put them on the internet? And you may say, well, Matt, sellers are going to want to make you put it on there. Are they? Have you ever been on a listing appointment before? Every listing appointment I walk into, like, hey, can we put this in the privates? Can we go in the pockets? Can we sell it off market? Prior to this whole N.A.R. settlement thing, there was a huge lawsuit about pocket listings, and people were mad about it because it was like unfair representation, and that people were mad that they were being hidden. It's like, okay, well, do you think pocket listings are going to be a smaller problem now that we don't really need to use the MLS, right? So like, why would I put it on? Like, what benefit is it to me to put it on the MLS if there's no regulation anymore on there? And then if according to the media, I could sell every property in the world before it hits the market, like, why wouldn't I just not put it on the MLS? Most sellers out there, guys, by the way, most sellers hate to show their property. Like, they just hate it. Like, especially if you're a seller out there and you got kids, you know what I'm talking about. Like, the minute we give a showing request to a seller that has kids, they're like more mad than anything. It's like, what do you mean we have a showing? Like, I don't know, dude, like, we're on the market. Like, that's the point of this. Like, we got to show the property to sell it. But if I don't have to put it on the MLS anymore, why would I not just keep it off the MLS? And then here's the other thing, guys. Now we're not paying buyers brokers anymore, right? So let me run this wild theory through you. If I don't have to put it on the MLS, and I know the property is going to sell in a day according to the media, why wouldn't I just say, like, hey, I have a property that I know you want, and if you give me $50,000, I'll let you have it. And if you don't, I have somebody else that will. And you may say, Matt, $50,000, that's crazy. I'm not going to do it. Okay. I got there's 10 people that are bidding on this property, right? 1 out of the 10 people will give me 50 grand. Okay. So I'll just find the one that wants to give me the 50 grand. So now I get a finder's fee from them. I get the 50. Then I sell it for my seller. I get the number my seller does. And remember, guys, I work for the seller. I'm not saying I'm doing anything with the seller without the seller's knowledge. I'm be like, hey, seller, I found the buyer to get you X price. Okay. I did. That was my job. I did it. And then I got paid a little bit on top. Okay. Now that's how the business used to work, guys. Pre-buyers brokers. That's exactly what happened. You'd go in, each brokerage had their own book of listings. You didn't have to pay buyers brokers. So what you would do is find the person that's going to sweeten the pot the most for you personally, okay? And then you'd sell them the place. Your seller would be happy because they got top dollar. you would then also take your little bonus that was usually more than just a little, and that was it. And it was honestly, to me, it just seemed really slimy. I don't know, just like makes my skin crawl when I think about that's how it's going to be done. Now, I'm not saying for everybody out there that's going to start hating on this, that's the way I'm telling you I'm going to be doing business. But if you think that that's not what's going to happen from here on out, you're crazy. You're absolutely crazy. And you may get mad and put out bad comments when I say that, but that's the reality of life. Because if somebody can sell it in the day before it hits the market and they don't have to pay out a buyer's commission and they could make a bunch more money because they got something that everybody else wants, that's going to happen. I don't think that's right. I push to go on the MLS. I push to make it be fair for everybody. I'm not saying I agree with it. But if you think that's not going to start becoming a thing now, you're crazy. And again, the other reason why I know that's going to be a thing is because pocket listings right now are a huge thing. They're a huge thing. Every buyer I want's like, hey, you got access to pocket listings? Like, well, now, if sellers aren't paying buyers brokers, why aren't I going to say, yeah, I have access to pocket listings? How much is it worth to you? How much is it worth for you to be able to get information before anybody else does it? Maybe to you, it's nothing, right? Maybe to a lot of people, it's going to be zero. But when we find maybe 1 out of 10 people, that's worth an extra $500 just to have access to that, that's how we make more money. So like now we can get really slimy about it. I hope it doesn't go that way, and it hasn't yet. But these are trends I'm putting out there that I'm saying that like, could this start happening? Probably. Will in-house listings become a thing? Yes, they're 100% going to be. In-house listings are already a thing now, pre-MLS or pre-settlement. I think in-house listings are going to be a huge thing. Here's the other thing you guys have to think about. Remax, all these big, well, hasn't, but like a lot of the big companies have settled these lawsuits. Compass settled one for like $57 million. Like, how are they going to make up this money, right? Like $57 million is a lot of money, guys. That's a lot of money. But like, okay, well, if you could sell it in-house and keep the fees in-house and not have to give any fees out, you'll be more profitable. So do you think these big companies aren't going to start trying to push in-house listings? I'm not saying it's happening. Not saying it's happening. Will it happen? I'd be surprised if it didn't. I would be very surprised if in-house listings doesn't start to become the new norm in this new territory that we're going into. And when we talk about adapt or dying, like to me, if that starts happening more, now we're kind of going backwards. But there's an old saying in the book that I mention almost every podcast. History repeats itself. History repeats itself. Will all buyers pay brokers now? I don't think all buyers will. I think a lot of buyers aren't going to want to pay brokers. I think a lot of buyers hate brokers. I think a lot of buyers won't pay brokers. But guess what? There will be a lot of buyers that will. So, here's a big thing. I have a lot of buyers that we take out that don't buy. I was looking, and from what I came up with, this is rough math. I can't say it's 100% accurate, but what we found is that if we take out 6 buyers, only one of them closes, okay? So we take out 6 buyers, only one of them ends up actually buying. The other 5 just completely waste their time. We drive around with them for hours on end, days on end, weeks on end, months on end, sometimes years on end. They're emailing at all hours of the day, 8 a.m., 10 a.m., 5 a.m., whatever it is. They're very needy. They want questions all the time or answers all the time to their questions. And I'm not saying that, listen, I'm not mad about it. Like, that's my job. I'm legit. I'm crazy. Like, I like to do it. I like helping out my people. I'm not saying this like a bitch man, but I'm saying like do it. But then only 1 out of 6 close. Okay? So that means that out of 6 people, we fail 5 times and then 1 buys. And I wouldn't say we fail. I'd say that 5 people just aren't really serious. There's been this thing where people just like to look at homes. We have a saying in our office, they're not a buyer. We always say, oh, those people, they're not buyers. They're just looking. They're just looking. Well, now that people have to could pay buyers brokers, how many of those people that are, 1 out of 6, how many of those people will be real buyers? Because if 5 of them aren't real buyers, maybe we never even take them out in the first place, right? And then when people ask me like, well, hey, Matt, like, how are you going to get buyers to sign an agreement? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out exactly everything that we do and talk about how awesome we are. We're going to have just like my listing agreements, I'm going to have a cancel anytime policy in there. Okay, so you can fire me. You don't like me, fire me. That's fine. You're not obligated to use us. But if you're going to commit to me, you have to be willing to pay us the percentage that we require. And if you don't want to work with us, that's fine. And you know what? When people ask me how am I going to get people to sign it, I'm great. I do think I'm the best at my job. I think I'm really good at my job. And I think the services we offer I really feel I should get paid more for my advice and the services we offer. And I'm sure somebody's out there like, you shouldn't get paid anything. I get it. Everybody should get paid $0. That's great. I'm saying that for the hours I put in and what I bring to the table, I think we're worth every penny. And there will be a lot of people who don't want to sign the agreement. So people are like, Matt, how are you going to get buyers to sign agreements? Here's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to show them exactly, who we are and what we offer. I do consultations for every buyer. I won't work with the buyer until we do a consultation, walk them through the process. I'm going to walk them through the buyer's agreement. And if they're not willing to sign it, then we won't work with them. And then guess what? A lot of people are like, well, aren't a lot of buyers not going to work with you? Yes, a lot of buyers aren't going to work with us. But the more I thought about it, now that, the dust has settled down a little bit, I think to myself, okay, well, if we're only taking out, or if 1 out of 6 people are only actually buying, maybe only 3 people sign this, right? So maybe out of those 3 people, maybe 2 of the people buy because they know that they're committed to us and have to buy if they buy anywhere. Because essentially a buyer's agreement says that no matter where you buy, you're paying us, okay? So that means the buyer's going to be more loyal too. They're not just going to walk into some random open house and buy it and try to cut a deal with the listing agent because they're committed to us. They're just not going to, click on a button on the internet on Zillow, meet another guy, and then be like, oh, I'm under contract now, because they'll be like, oh, wait, I have to pay Matt if I buy this place, so I got to call Matt. So maybe only 3. So instead of me taking out 6 buyers, maybe only take out 3, but 3 people close. So now if we go 3 for 3 rather than 1 for 6, isn't it a better thing? I just keep thinking how much time we're going to save. And I also keep thinking, will real-time tours be a big thing, right? Right now, a lot of people click on a button and they say, hey, I want to see the Trump. I'm eating brunch here in the lobby. I'd love to see a unit in here. We've had 6 mimosas. Kind of want to go upstairs, get a little frisky, see what this place looks like up there, right? I don't know why it happens, but they do it. Come up there, they're half in the bag, drunk, making out, looking at the property. Happens every weekend. Not a Saturday goes by. Not a Saturday goes by where we don't get a couple that's had a couple cocktails in them wanting to tour property, okay? Now that there's this whole buyer's agreement to get signed, will that happen? To click on a button, I say, hey, we need to have a buyer's agreement signed to go through that. Will they take a look at it? Now, I'm sure some people are going to loosely sign these things and do it, sure. But, every weekend we take out at least 10 people that literally never buy. That's a lot of time we're going to save. A lot more time we'll be able to save for more serious buyers. Now, what else is going to happen, speaking of clicking on the buttons, we're going to see buyer's agreements change. Because here's the other thing to kind of note about this whole lawsuit, guys. Buyer's agreements. What defines an agreement, right? It doesn't say it has to be a written agreement. It just says there needs to be a buyer's agreement. You could sign it online, right? So maybe when people click on Redfin and Zillow and these real-time tours, a box will check up saying, hey, click here to be able to schedule it. And by clicking this box, that means that you understand that the person that you are being assigned to is your buyer's agent, right? Can't the companies just do that? Do you think that's not going to happen? Isn't that a great way to get around the system? We know that's going to happen. I don't know that for a fact, but hypothetically speaking, in a hypothetical world, if I was running a hypothetically online website and I hypothetically wanted to make money by selling leads, I would hypothetically think that's the best route I would want to go, hypothetically speaking. So if you think that's not going to happen either, these little loopholes that are out there, we'll be starting to see that as well. Let's see here. What will my agreements say? My buyer's agreements are just going to break down all of our services and really tell you and show you the value we have. And I think a lot of people are nervous to put on paper what they do because I think a lot of people don't have much to offer. I think I've given this example before, but I'll give it again, is that like a lot of people ask me, Matt, why do you have so many more reviews than everybody else? How do you get reviews? I get a lot of people ask me, Matt, how do you get so many reviews? And I say, well, I ask my clients. They say, well, what do you mean you ask your clients? I say, well, I ask my clients for reviews. So like you just ask them? Like, yeah. I'm like, hey, you had a great experience. You felt like I gave you a great service, right? And people say, yes. I said, would you mind doing me a big favor and reviewing me online? Because that gives me a lot of business in the future. And people are like, yeah, of course I would be. Of course, I'd love to do that for you. So that's how I get reviews. But now let me put it this way. If I give really bad service and my people aren't happy and I ask them for a review, they're probably not going to give me a review or they're going to give me a bad review, right? So like, I'm not going to have any reviews. So when people ask me, why do I have so many reviews? Because I'm great at my job. People like me. They like the service I get, so they write me a good review. So it's like, I'm not nervous to ask for a review. I'm not, because I know I'm great at my job. Just like in my buyer's agreement, I'm not nervous to get a buyer's agreement signed because I know I'm great at my job. So I know that people are going to want to sign it. And the people who don't want to sign it aren't going to be buyers anyway. So it doesn't matter to me. So when people ask, how will I do this? What's mine going to say? It's going to lay out my services. It's going to show how great of a job that we're going to do for our clients. And are some people going to get pissed off and not sign it? Sure. Are a lot of people going to? Of course. The thing I keep thinking about more and more is that, the whole agreement aspect, like you would never sign, like I would never take a listing and not have a listing agreement signed and then pay for all the pictures, pay for all the media, market it, spend all the time updating them without some sort of agreement. I would never do that. In fact, it's not even legal in the MLS here to do so. I would never take a listing on without getting paperwork signed and having a set agreement with my seller. I would never do that, ever. Why have I always done this with buyers? Why have I always been randomly taking out buyers without an agreement? I've had like an epiphany on this. And this is my Eastern Illinois stupid education. I've never thought about this before, but like, why would I not have an agreement with a buyer? So when people talk about like, why are we getting these buyer's agreements signed? They're all mad. I'm just like, why would I not? I'm not taking a listing on without getting a listing agreement signed. I'm not spending all this time and money on a listing without some sort of commitment from my seller. Why am I going to spend all this time and money and energy on my buyer without an agreement? And people are like, Matt, you don't have to spend anything on a buyer. Yeah, I do. I have a staff. You want to get in places last minute? I can't handle scheduling 50 tours in the middle of the day. I have staff to do that for me. Well, guess what, guys? They don't work for free. Their health insurance doesn't pay for themselves. Their 401ks don't pay by themselves. I got to pay for that. And I have to pay for that because I have to make sales. And out of those sales, I pay my staff. But how can I do that without an agreement with my buyers? And the more I think about this, it's like, I'm for this. I think this is great. The more I think about this, it's like, okay, a lot of people aren't going to sign. And a lot of those people who aren't going to sign my buyer's agreements are my 5 out of 6 that don't buy. We're going to get more serious buyers that are going to look, and those buyers are going to be more committed to me personally. And I also know that there's a set amount that they understand that we're going to be getting made, and there's full disclosure out there. And if the seller is not going to be willing to pay my commission, that the buyer is going to pick up that tab. And if they're not willing to do that, then we're not going to work together. I don't mean that in a rude way. It's just like, listen, I have 3 kids. I got a family. I got to feed them too. I have a whole staff. I'm running a business. There's no safety net for me. There's nothing that like I could go to get money. There's no other source of income for me other than sales. And that doesn't mean I'm pushing people to buy stuff. That means I'm gonna help you and assist you to get what you need. And I'm gonna give you a great job and make sure that you get a great, whether I'm helping you buy or sell, make sure you get a great experience. And that's how it's gonna work. And we're gonna have these agreements signed. So the more and more we dissect what the settlement really means, is it really that big of a deal? Can't put commissions on the MLS? Got to get a buyer's agreement signed? Is it really, is this the end of the world, guys? Is it? Does it really matter? I don't think so. A lot of people have been talking about prices coming down. As I talked about earlier, have I seen prices start coming down now that they're not paying buyer's commissions? No. In fact, I've seen prices go up. I think the funniest part about all this is, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, is that the people who aren't paying out buyer's commissions are the people who want the most money. They want way above market, which means that the buyers that want to buy those properties are going to end up paying more money than the property's worth, and then they're going to have to pay a buyer's commission on top of it if they want to have representation. So last time I checked, if you got to pay 5 instead of 3, that means you're spending 2 more than you had to. So yeah, I don't see prices coming down at all. In fact, I see prices come up. Now, when we talk about all prices coming down in general, you have to remember is that the price growth in most of America has been skyrocketing. Most of the markets I work, 50% of the markets I work, the market's been coming down. All that's going to happen is the market's start cooling off in general, guys. That's all. And it's bound to happen. This is a good question I had some people ask me. Are we seeing people up commission? We're seeing a lot of people up. I've heard this in other states. A genius idea. And all these listings that we're having a problem selling, we're upping our commission. I'm encouraging bonuses now. Hey, everybody else is going to start taking things down. We can't give this place away. Let's up this bad boy. Let's give out more money to try to attract more people, right? When everybody else gets scared, this is when we double down. If everybody else is pulling something and we can't give ours, if everybody, let's imagine that this all happens like the media says that nobody's going to be paying out commissions. Okay, I got a product I can't sell. Nobody else is offering me money. Matt, what's a good idea to sell my place faster? Let's offer a shit ton of money to somebody. Well, what do you mean, Matt? It was like, well, listen, we can't give this place away. You want to sell it. All your competitors aren't offering commission. Let's offer 4%. Just do it. Do you care? Is 4% worth you selling it? Of course, Matt, it is. Okay. And then somebody out there is going to be like, well, why don't you take 4% off the price for a buyer? 100%, guys. We'll offer any random buyer that wants to buy it on their own 4% off. Or if you got a buyer's agent, 4% bonus. I'm just saying it's not a bad strategy if you think about it. And we've seen this happen in other markets, and it's been truly successful. If a hot property comes on the market and there's no commission going out, why does a buyer need a broker? Well, guys, if there's 50 offers on a property, how are you going to win if you're a random buyer and you've never done this before? So I actually think the hotter the property, the more attractive a buyer's broker is going to be. But my point in this podcast was not to try to talk about people why they definitely need buyers brokers. We'll get into that in another podcast a few times down the road. My point is, like, what are we seeing really in the industry, and what do buyers and sellers really need to know with what's been going on with this? And lastly, I think we should have done more education for realtors. With a lot of realtors going to be leaving the industry, and one of the reasons why the general public hates brokers so much is that, and I've had a lot of my clients reach out to me about this and say is that, like, they always just feel that the broker's only out for themselves. And in a way, the broker kind of is only out for, well, I wouldn't say only out for themselves, but they are out for their own interests as well. And I get that point of view. I can see why consumers think that. But I think the really good brokers know that, like, hey, this is a long-term play. If a buyer or seller can see that I care about them and want to make sure that they get the best thing that's for them, maybe I don't get a sale that day, but I get a sale in the future. They recommend me to their friends and family. They know that they could depend on me for honest advice. And that's what leads to a big business. And I understand that. I understand that it's a bigger picture play. Are there a lot of brokers out there that don't? 100%. Are there a lot of terrible brokers? 100%. But I think what the NAR should start looking at, especially with the settlement coming down, is education. And not just these like BS, like continuing education courses, meaning that, like, I don't think a real estate agent should be able to sell a property without assistance for 2 years, minimum, like college education. They have to work on a mega team or a big team underneath somebody else and do all the grunt work. Put up signs, put up lock boxes, answer calls, help answer emails, maybe assist open houses. Really learn a business for 2 years. 2 years minimum. Watch those guys negotiate. Watch things that are wrong with the houses. Go on home inspections. Learn the business. Then on their third year, they can start offering advice on what to do with a sale. I don't think somebody should be able to take an online course and then be able to tell somebody what to do with their asset. It reminds me of these financial advisors that don't have any money and rent a house and try to tell me what to do with my money. It's like, well, you don't have any money. Why are you going to tell me what to do with my money? It's the same thing in real estate. Why do we just let people come into the business and not, have any experience in it to then tell you what to do with your place? And I think that's one of the reasons why this whole lawsuit came to fruition. So it's just something to kind of think about when I end this podcast talking about what we're seeing firsthand. Now, I'm going to do another update on this whole settlement, let's say probably mid-August, to say what really happened after July. But these are the initial thoughts after the podcast that we did last time to show you what's really happening and what's really changed so far right now that we're seeing. Thanks for listening to Laricy Live.